Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with Sean Woodroffe, who is the Chief People Officer at TIAA. Prior to joining TIAA, Sean was the Chief People Officer at National Life Group, and before that, he was the U.S. Head of HR and Associate Communications at Sun Life Financial. He is also dedicated to the community, as evidenced by his roles on the board of the U.S. Soccer Foundation, Petty School, Shaw University, and the Garner CHRO Global Leadership Board. Sean, thank you very much for joining us today. It's really a great honor to have you down on campus.
Thank you. I don't know about it being an honor, but I'm pleased to be here, yes, Anthony.
So, particularly recently, after going through COVID and George Floyd issue, HR really has, I think, been more recognized by many people around the world of its importance. Do you agree that that's true, that's been grown even greater in terms of recognition?
In terms of recognition, I would agree. I think in terms of importance, I would perhaps make the argument that the importance and the essential nature of HR as a practice has always been there, but we have received more recognition, not only because of George Floyd, as you mentioned, but actually what preceded George Floyd was the pandemic. And the notion that HR practitioners overnight had to become sort of epidemiologists and viral immunologists, just in terms of appreciating the complexities and severities and vicissitudes of the virus, because we had to ensure that what was critical is the safety and well-being of our employee base. And when you think about the role that HR played orchestrating in partnership with our IT colleagues, orchestrating just working remotely and making sure that mental health stayed on the forefront. And as you pointed out, Anthony, having to respond to the murder of George Floyd in a way that had not been done prior to that from a corporate perspective. And now fast forward 2 years later, helping associates appreciate that the virus isn't disappearing. How do we cope with it? How do we ensure that employees are more comfortable with change? How do we manage anxieties? All of that falls on the shoulders of the HR community as stewards of a company's culture. I would agree wholeheartedly that our recognition has been enhanced by the events of the last 30 months.
So I like how you started with that it is, that the function is the importance of the function has always been there. But so perhaps thinking about it the way you just described it, the recognition from maybe areas of the organization or general public that didn't appreciate it as much. Does that recognition allow you new tools or new opportunities to do things, or to do things maybe a little easier than in the past?
Perhaps for some it may, because there are some organizations that might not have recognized HR to be an essential part of the company's strategic outlook as others. I have been both blessed and fortunate to have worked for companies, none better than the one where I'm presently employed, that have always recognized that the most valuable assets that we have as an enterprise are the associates that are, they used to say up and down the elevator, we can now say that are on Zoom calls, but the associates that are, who have sort of dedicated their livelihoods in support of the clients that we serve. So from my perspective, nothing really changes. But I am definitely pleased and gratified to experience this sort of general public recognition that the HR practice has enjoyed because of the events of the last 30 months.
And when you talk about the TIAA associates and the culture that for long has been about developing it, one part that really has been extraordinary as a leader in the field is TIAA's ability to develop really diverse talent and throughout the organization.
Can you explain why that's important at TIAA and maybe give some of the stories behind it?
We believe that we serve those that serve others. So our goal at TIAA is to provide lifetime income solutions to the clients that we serve. And in so doing, we need to have the best possible workforce that we can, and an engaged workforce. For us to have the best possible workforce, we need access and exposure to the biggest talent pool. If we were to focus on simply a homogeneous pool of talent, we would be restricting our ability to get access to the biggest pool. So apart from the obvious virtue of having a diverse workforce, but purely from a practical / pragmatic point of view, having access to the biggest pool of talent means that we have to think about, survey, access, interview, recruit the biggest possible pool of talent. That means by necessity it has to be a diverse talent pool. For us at TIAA, we have been focused on diversity before perhaps it might have been in vogue to so do. The first woman that was appointed to our board of trustees was in the 1940s, Ada Comstock, who was the president of Radcliffe University. And here we are 70 years later, TIAA's board of trustees are a majority women. There are more women on our board than there are men. That is who we are.
And that's
as
really,
a company.
that is a really remarkable thing to say, particularly in the financial services industry. So what do you attribute that culture to, or what are some of the things you do to make it like that?
Well, this might be a bit counterintuitive, Anthony, but for us it's not remarkable, right? For us it is part and parcel of who we are and what we believe is necessary to compete in an increasingly challenging, competitive environment. We have to have a diverse culture, and that means we have to attract women, we have to attract underrepresented minorities, we have to attract colleagues from the LGBTQ plus community, we have to attract veterans, we have to attract the widest possible pool of diverse talent.
And I think related to that general idea of a wide pool of diverse talent, TIAA is well known for being for paying more attention to a wide variety of stakeholders, including employees, the communities, et cetera, rather than just the way kind of traditionally many organizations were focused just on pure shareholder return. Can you describe why that's important to have such a broad emphasis?
It's the nature of how we're set up. So one of the unique aspects of TIAA as a company, and Anthony, you are what we refer to as a participant or client of the company, because University of South Carolina is one of our esteemed clients. And because you're a participant of TIAA, the profits that we earn in part are redistributed to our participants. So we redistribute billions of proceeds to participants on an ongoing basis, which is a unique characteristic of who we are. And having the privilege of serving institutions and serving clients that have dedicated their lives in terms of serving others, which is the principles upon which Andrew Carnegie in 1918 established the company, puts us in a position where we feel this is who we are as a company. And we take great pride in that and privilege in so doing.
And we thank you, by the way, for protecting us. We talked a little bit earlier about data analytics in the financial services firm. That data, of course, and analytics are critical to decision making. Can you talk a little bit about how that applies to the HR function, which traditionally may not have been as focused on data as some other functions?
Yeah, from an HR perspective, data is essential. So I'll just take the process of recruitment as an example. We track and measure our applicant flow. What is the representation of applicants that apply for a particular role? Among that application cohort, what percent of those that apply get a first interview? What percent get a second interview? And when you look at we talked before about diversity and representation, is we also track and ensure that when an applicant is being interviewed at TIAA, that the interview panel is also a diverse panel. We track internal career mobility. We track and measure how employees get rated to ensure that there are no anomalies or disparities in terms of rating distribution. We do analysis around pay equity. We want to ensure, as an example, that women are paid on a like-for-like comparable basis than their male counterpart for the same job and the same performance rating and the same experience. So we're a bit incessant about analytics and data.
One of the many challenges that companies came through that HR really had to drive coming through the pandemic was, of course, the moving people to remote workforce and then back into the organization in some fashion, a hybrid way or otherwise. And TIAA, my understanding is, actually did that really well in the sense that employees seemed to be quite satisfied with how that process went in both ways. Can you describe your process and some of the things that went well that way?
Certainly. I have to confess that it was perhaps easier to do the former than the latter. So it was easier for us to move to a fully remote workforce as we were all sort of operating in some level of a mandated social distancing and quarantining, so to speak. It has been a little bit more difficult in terms of transitioning back into the office. What has eased that transition is, as is the case with many companies, TIAA has made the decision that we will operate on a hybrid basis. By hybrid, I mean on average 2 days a week remotely versus 3 days a week in the office. So that is our operating model vis-a-vis remote versus working in the office. And as you pointed out, Anthony, our associates have given the company a lot of grace in terms of accepting and adopting that persona. We have well over 90% of our employee base so far since we started this in September 6th, formally September 6th of this year following Labor Day. We're about a 95, 96, 97% adoption rate at this point. And we took the point of view that there are obvious attributes to working in the office. People talk about collaboration, some talk about productivity. Our view is we want a culture of face-to-face interaction on a periodic basis, at least 3 days a week in the office. We think it is necessary. We think it also supports mental health. And we believe that the benefits of being able to have a drive-by discussion or an impromptu meeting, or be able to really get a sense of colleagues when you're engaged in an intense discussion in person rather than through a Zoom screen, is necessary for our culture.
And I'm certainly one who is a believer in all you just described. But what's your argument to younger workers, perhaps our students later today, when they say, oh no, but I can be just as productive or more productive when I'm at home, why do I need to come into the office?
Well, a couple of things that come to mind. One is what does productive really mean? So if productive means that working at home, I can work without being bothered, without having to subject myself to an impromptu interruption, that I can sort of just focus on exactly what I'm doing, I would say check the box. But I would also ask that person to think about productivity. Productivity is just not about what I do. It's also the impact that I have on you. And it is very obvious that in a work environment, the ability for an employee to pop over at my desk and ask a question that can help him or her be more productive is much easier to do if we're working in the office than it is if it's on a Zoom or having to rely on a phone call. That's one. Two is, I also ask the question, at what cost? Because I believe, and the data has shown, that there has been a societal cost to us working remotely for this protracted period of time from March 2020 up until at least the summer of 2021, for that two-year plus period. And we have seen an increase, Anthony, in anxiety generally. We have seen an increase in mental health issues. We have seen an increase, sadly, among the youth that you just referenced for suicide. And many believe that increase is directly correlated with this isolation that we have had to endure for such a long period of time. So the benefits of seeing each other, being in some place, engaging with each other on a live, extemporaneous basis has to abate some of those trends, sadly, that we've seen.
So there's mental health benefits to the individual for coming in, and there's productivity benefits for the collective.
For the collective, that's exactly right.
And part of, you've been talking about the desire to attract the biggest, broadest pool of talent and the need to have great talent. There's been a lot of talk about this great resignation. Do you believe that? Was there a great resignation? And if so, is it still going on, or how are you dealing with it?
Well, there was a great resignation of Uber drivers. There was a great resignation of people working in the hospitality industry. We have not experienced at our company a great resignation. Our voluntary resignation rate is still, turnover rate is still hovering around the high single digits. Obviously, there are some, Anthony, areas of the company where we might see a higher level of turnover, and there are other areas where we might see a lower turnover. But the view that we take is, when people talk about the Great Resignation, the number one reason why people leave an organization today is still the number one reason it was 600 years ago. And that number one reason is, I have a lousy experience with my supervisor, with my manager. That is still among the top reasons why people leave companies. And if you were to extend that, so that's around culture, I'm no longer engaged, this company's values is antithetical to my values, I don't feel this company's purpose is aligned to my purpose and mission. That is the reason why people leave companies. And our antidote to that is ensuring that we have a relentless focus on the associate experience. We want our workforce to be as engaged as possible, because if we have a highly engaged workforce, we get better business results and we have a lower turnover. And we have seen that our engagement results are perfectly aligned to our turnover. We have a high engagement results and we have low turnover. That's a long-winded response to the question.
But related to this, you've talked about the associates and the importance of them, and part of that falls into the well-being of associates. And I've heard TIAA talk about caring about the well-being of associates a lot, even beyond just the engagement scores. But you guys seem to really care about your associates that way. Can you share why that's important and maybe some of the things you've done?
Well, when you you say care more about the engagement scores, it's actually part and parcel, right? So that caring of associates is manifested in their engagement. Because if an associate doesn't enjoy a good experience with the company, they will have a low engagement, and we want to have a workforce that is as dedicated to our participants in the same manner and fashion that our participants, you are dedicated to serving the students that you serve on an ongoing basis. And that is why we focus on the associate experience. And the associate experience is really, we want our associates to recognize that as we think about their mental health, as we think about their well-being, as we think about career development, as we think about mobility, as we think about pay equity, as we think about diversity, as we think about strategic goals, it's all aligned to their interest.
And then finally, here at the Center for Executive Succession, we obviously spend a lot of time talking about CEO succession and the processes involved. But we also consider the processes involved with C-suite succession more generally. And we know that the CHRO is deeply involved in the CEO succession part. But can you describe a little bit about what goes on in other areas of succession? So, for instance, CFO succession.
So, absolutely. At our company, we have an ongoing focus on talent review, talent management, and succession planning. We have a process by which we identify successors on a time basis, whether we have ready now successors, we have ready 1 to 3 years successors, we have ready 3+ successors. We engage an outside firm to conduct an assessment of our succession talent to help either validate or in some instances invalidate our own point of view on that talent. And we want to ensure that there is a development plan that is accompanying each identified successor. So it's not simply about listing a successor on a piece of paper, but what development on a targeted, purposeful basis is being contemplated to ensure that that person is well on track to achieve that succession planning goal.
Sean, thank you very much for joining us. Really a treat and honor to have you on campus.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine, sir.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today, Sean Woodroffe of TIAA shared with us the importance of creating a sustainable, healthy workforce to drive business success. He also shared his views regarding how HR must drive company culture and employee innovation. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.